Hello and welcome to the Hellraiser blog. Particularly excited with today's Hellraiser blog because it's the first ever Hellraiser blog I've ever done standing up rather than sitting at my desk, which I normally do. Might even end up being the only one I ever do standing up, so enjoy it, guys. Right, today's Hellraiser blog we're going to look at Lucas Browne versus Dillian Whyte. Let's look at the fighters first. So Dillian Whyte, Dillian boxed in a lot of my shows, Hellraiser shows early on in his career. He's 6'4", reach of 198 centimetres. Against Lucas Browne, Australian fighter, 6'5", so he's an inch taller, and a reach of 196. So although he's an inch taller, his reach is in fact 2 centimetres shorter, which I think actually that favours Dillian Whyte quite considerably. That along with Dillian Whyte's movement. Let's go a little bit before we move on. In fact, let's do the drugs thing because it sort of overshadows everything that these guys sort of do, and I think just get it out of the way. Right, so Dillian Whyte took a drink called Jack 3D, which a lot of boxers took early on at that time because it was available over the counter, and then they gave urine samples which were found positive. Because on the bottle I believe it said suitable for athletes, what it wasn't suitable for was passing the drugs test. So Dillian had a while out because of that, and then Lucas Browne failed his first drugs test in Chechnya. Now, I was quite sympathetic to him. He went to Chechnya and boxed against Ruslan Shagayev, who was for me, there was like the top 2 or 3 heavyweights, and then there was probably about like 9 or 10 heavyweights that any one of those 9 or 10 could win a version of the world title, and Ruslan Shagayev was probably one of the better ones out of that sort of pocket of fighters. So Lucas Browne went to Chechnya. I fully expected him to get beat probably on points by Shagayev. I was with Ricky Hatton the night that the fight happened, and he has a promotional contract with Lucas Browne, and suddenly this text came up saying no, he's won. He's stopped the guy. I mean, by a mile, I've watched the fight several times as well, and by an absolute country mile, the best performance that Lucas Browne's ever done. Unfortunately, he then gets found to have failed a doping test. There's one thing that I think you've got to mention here that I think is very relevant to the drugs test being failed. In round 6, Browne gets dropped quite heavily. He gets up, he sort of gets himself together, but the round goes on 15 seconds longer than it's supposed to. I mean, that could have been just like appallingly bad, negligent timekeeping. It's possible, right? A cynic would say, no, that was cheating, but it's possible. The next round, Browne pulls himself together, Shagayev comes in, and Browne nails him. Really hurts him, knocks all the stuffing out of him, and the round finishes 44 seconds early. Right, so either you could say, right, well, just the timekeeper was useless, right? He was completely off form that day, but he's no good. Or you could say, a cynic would say, no, they cheated. They tried to look after the home fighter in 2 occasions, and they cheated. Well, if they cheated with the timekeeping, the same cynic would then say, well, they probably cheated with the drugs test as well. Very strong possibility they could have tampered with it. Got to be so careful now. And then Lucas Browne then failed another drugs test with, I believe, a drink similar to the one that Dillian Whyte had when he failed his, where just an over-the-counter thing that he'd drunk and it then showed up, and it was something. You've got to be so careful now with if you're a boxer or a trainer, with what you ingest, because if it's in your system, you're guilty. That's how it works. So anyway, let's get back to this fight. Thank God that fight that Shagayev and Lucas Browne had didn't go to the points scorecards, because then I think we could have had a major scandal there. Anyway, so back to this fight. I think, although you've got 2 big guys and they're both proven big punchers, like I say, Dillian Whyte boxed on my Hellraiser shows. I always used to speak to the opponents, and he can definitely punch. I remember him boxing a guy called Marcelo Nascimento, who's a Brazilian, who boxed a lot of top level guys. And he said, no, Dillian Whyte, big puncher. He said, like, really concussive, wow, big puncher. So I knew, right, on that, you can use it as a yardstick if you like, considering that he'd been in with, like, you know, some really top guys, big punching guys. I thought, okay, well, that's enough for me. Dillian Whyte can punch. He looked like he could punch anyway. You can see the way the damage he does. And Lucas Browne's record speaks for itself. My problem is, I think here the most pertinent factor is going to be the weight of Lucas Browne. Lucas Browne, for me, should be coming in sort of... He won't, but I would have him sort of 8-6, something like that. I think the big difference that he showed in the fight with Shagayev was his movement. And he never moved like that before. And then he had a fight since against a guy called Rudenko, a Ukrainian fighter, Andrei Rudenko. I nearly signed, incidentally, Rudenko like years ago. Now he's gone a little bit off the boil, Rudenko, but capable enough fighter. And Lucas Browne beat him, but looked terrible in beating him, looked really sluggish. And he was high 18s in that fight. And that made me think, okay, he needs to come down 18-7, 18-8, 17... Sorry, 18-8. The problem that I think we're going to have here, because you look at Dillian Whyte, he looks in very good shape. You look at Lucas Browne, there's actually he doesn't look in good. He looks heavy. And there was an interview. It's on. You can find it on YouTube. It was on the Sky Sports website. It's Lucas Browne talking about the Dillian Whyte fight, and they ask him on Sky. They ask him your weight. How is your about with your weight? And he sort of hesitates a second. And there's a real tell to me in the way he reacts that says to me he's heavy. He's really heavy. He didn't let on. He didn't say I'm miles over the weight, but I just read between the lines, and I think Dillian is got a big chance here, because I think Dillian's very light on his feet. He's very mobile, both with his feet and his upper body. He moves very well, which for a heavyweight isn't always the case. And certainly, if you look at the guys that Lucas Browne has boxed, he hasn't really fought many guys that have got that good head movement, other than Shagayev, who he beat. But like I say, he was very light for that fight, and I think that gave a different Lucas Browne, which I don't think we're going to see here with Dillian Whyte, which actually means we're possibly going to see quite a messy fight, a lot of clinching, both from trying to ball their way in. If you saw Dillian Whyte against Derek Chisora, I think Dillian Whyte did win that fight. I thought it was a good decision. I thought he nicked it. I think he could have beat Chisora quite handily if he'd have used the movement that he's been gifted with, but it's like they didn't want to give an inch. And if we get that here, then we'll get two big guys, and it could get quite clingy and quite untidy. And from a spectator's point of view, it won't be like the dynamite that we want to see. Should that be the case, that they do get clingy, then I think it definitely Whyte will win on points, because I think he'll outwork Lucas Browne over the second half of the fight. If he's allowed to box, then Dillian Whyte, then firstly I think he can knock Browne out, even though Browne has never really shown signs of being chinny. I mean, he was dropped by Shagayev, but recovered very quickly and came back into it, which made me feel maybe he wasn't, you know, he wasn't falling apart by the knockdown. It just sort of maybe caught him well, and but he shook it off. I think here, what we're going to see, I think we're going to see Dillian Whyte using boxing, using movement, using that speed of foot and hand that he can use, that I've seen him use many times, and I think that will give him a points victory. If we look at the only fight that Lucas Browne had since the Shagayev fight, and a big problem for me with Lucas Browne has been the inactivity. He hasn't boxed often enough. He just hasn't, and that to me, at the age that he's at now, is going to be a big problem. Dillian Whyte has been a bit more active, and he'll be a bit lighter. And I think you know, the fight that we saw Lucas Browne with Matthew Greer. I mean, Greer is like way short of world class. You can't really read anything into it. And the one before that was the one where he supposedly the drug testing thing. So I'm going to wait for the weigh-in. They come in at the weigh-in, and Lucas Browne is like 18.5 stone. I would actually swing massively back to him then. The problem is I don't think he is going to be. I think he's going to be heavy. I think Dillian Whyte will have too much speed and movement for him, and that's going to give him a points win. Watch it, guys, watch it. Anyway, please give us a like and a subscribe, and enjoy the fight, guys. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.